It's a non-core banger. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Keep your mental sharp, learn all the tactics. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Podcast game, ayy, he got it mastered. It's encore.
Peace to the Purpose and Practice podcast community. We are back for another week. You hear Mr. Encore with the dope introduction. Shout out to Mr. Encore. Shout out to Mama Hill doing their thing. We are excited about this week's guest. Before we get into the show this week, though, I just wanted to take a few minutes just to alert you, put you on to how we're going to be entering the new year with the podcast. So after tonight's show, after tonight's episode, we are going to be on a bit of a break for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then we're going to come back at you January 2nd. That's when we're going to reopen the show. And we're going to do what I'm calling sort of like a new year, new you. Or it may not be a new you. It may just be a more refined you. But we're going to do a few shows in the months of January and February where we are focusing on self-development. We're focusing on family wellness. We're going to have guests who are going to focus on financial literacy. We're going to have guests who focus on education, especially with the youth, with the younger folks. And then we're going to do some financial strategies, some things like that, planning, getting into things like life insurance, all of those things. I really think that at the beginning of the year, the start of the year is when I feel like our brains mentally were most primed to have those discussions. So we are definitely going to hit that off at the start of the year. So please make sure that you're ready to tune into those shows. With that said, I'm asking that everyone, I feel it feels crazy even asking people to do this. I don't do a good job of this, I've been told. But please subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Purpose and Practice podcast on YouTube. If you can, like it, subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, to subscribe, and you can even rate us. You can rate us as well. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify. You can find the Purpose and Practice podcast on all of the streaming domains. So please, wherever you're listening, please like it. Please definitely subscribe. I definitely need subscriptions because what that does is it helps to put us in a better space in this algorithm. So with that said, again, after tonight, you won't be hearing any more from the Purpose and Practice podcast until the start of the new year. We'll be coming to you back in January 2nd. And then, like I said, I'm going to have a lineup designed specifically for you all, for the community, in terms of getting your, that first month off, the way that we need to get it going. For January and February, we're going to really focus on that physical fitness. We're going to focus on all of that. I'm working on putting a nice list of guests who are experts in those areas to come on and speak to you in terms of how you can start getting down with that. So thanks again for joining. What's up, sis? I see you. Thanks for joining in. We are going to now welcome our guest for tonight. We're looking forward to having this brother in, and I'm going to bring him on right now. Shout out to Nicole. Good to see you, Nicole. Dope episode last, very inspirational episode last week. So shout out to you and shout out to my sister, Sharad. So we're about to start this up. I'm going to bring in the brother and we're going to get going. Peace to the brother Sapp. It's crazy because I'm so excited about this episode with, Mr. Derrell Sapp for many reasons. We were talking a little bit before we got on tonight, and you talk about reaching back to bring forward. And that is the purpose of this podcast, is to
Yeah.
reach back and bring forward with, Sankofa. And as we were talking, I was asking him how his family was doing. He was asking me how my family was doing. His dad, shout out to Mr. Sapp, celebrating his 70th birthday today. So let's give a shout out. Yes, a huge shout out to Mr. Sapp. Happy birthday. Shout out to your moms, Mrs. Sapp, and I was talking to him, and then Darius and DeWeese, we all kind of grew up around the way. And Derrell's aunt, right? Sherry, his aunt Sherry Sapp, was like my babysitter growing up. So she used to have me all over Garfield Court, Grant Court. And then she got a car and we were all over. And she would take ice cream, stuff like just good people. But that's also, when we look at this, the reason for this, the purpose of this podcast is to bring our communities closer. There's so many phenomenal stories out there. I like to call just superhero stories, but people we pass every day in our communities who are doing amazing, amazing things. And, with that said, this brother that we're going to hear from tonight is someone I had the opportunity. I crossed paths. I mean, I watched him grow up as a child, as I described, but then I was able to coach him in football when he was a high school student. And then I was even able to work with him as a colleague. He was a colleague of mine. And just also always trying to, give him advice, input, guidance in terms of moving himself forward. But he has done all of the work. This man is an educator, as I put in the flyer, an educator, a mentor, obviously a son, a great dad, and someone who was out there who was committed to being an advocate for our youth and an advocate, especially for marginalized communities. So with that said, Brother Derrell Sapp, it's good to have you on the podcast. How you feeling tonight?
Listen, I feel good. Those things that you say is hard to even fathom or take those things in, because I just look at myself as Sapp still, So when people look at me like that, it's just like, yeah, you do all those things. So it's like, I just look at myself as some regular Joe like that as well. Cause I just always humble myself. It's just keep on this like this. That's just the things I just do. So that's just who I am.
And Sapp, I think that's a good way to be, right? Like, because sometimes one thing that life can do is humble us, right? And it can get us into a space of understanding that what you just said, we are all these imperfect individuals moving through this life without any manual, without any guidebook. So we are going to have failures and we are going to have triumph, but at the end of the day, we're all regular folks, right? We're all regular folks who are struggling with those same things. So I'm happy that, that you hit us there, with that. So we're blessed to have you here tonight. And what I like to start off, Mr. Sapp, Derrell, if you don't mind, if you could just tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now. What kind of work you're into, what's driving you, where your passion lies. If you can just, open up and share with the community a little bit about yourself and what you're up to now.
I'm a new school administrator. So what they call, I guess, because you're a school administrator as well, I guess they call it stepping onto the dark side. Stepping onto the dark side, which I would never thought, because I was never I never went to school for education. People might not know that. I went to school for sociology.
Okay.
In criminal justice at Montclair State. But what happened was, when I was a football player, which I was in the NFL draft in 2008, but I was substitute teaching in Long Branch. But when I was substitute teaching, I found out that was my passion and my purpose of being a Black male in education. And I saw that I was good at it. And then I saw there was only 2% of Black males in education. From there, and what happened was, I said, you know what, I actually like what I'm doing. So what happened was, I worked my way up from there, and I worked my way up from a paraprofessional to an administrator, and I took every step from there. And so I was a substitute teacher, I was a paraprofessional, I was a regular ed teacher, I was a special education teacher, I was a supervisor. And now I'm a school administrator. But I said, you know what, to make an effective change, I had to work my way up. Now, and so now I could, speak, directly to the people that I'm affecting, like far as the teachers and also the staff and also the parents as well.
Yes.
So that's my passion. That's my purpose. So practice and purpose. That's my purpose.
That's what's
and
up.
The fact that working with our students, especially ones who look like me, with Black males, what it's called is called cultural pedagogy, which a lot of people don't understand that. I'm a young administrator. So when I go to my students and see they look just like me and I'm working with them, I can relate to them because I was once them. I understand their genre of music. I understand the things that they wear. And so I build that rapport with them. So right now I'm actually in Burlington County. I was in Trenton schools for about 9 years in Trenton schools.
Wow.
Special education behavioral teacher. And now I'm in the middle school working with 7th and 8th grade students as well. I'm actually the dean of students here, which I do all the discipline throughout the whole middle school here. Have about 700 students that I work with daily. Cafeteria, about 300 students each. It's a little challenging, but you know what? This is my purpose as well.
Sure.
But I love it. I love it because it gives me a chance to do what I love. Every day is something different. I'm still at my office right now, still doing some paperwork. And I feel like I do my paperwork at the end of the day because during the daytime, but that relationship with all my students as well. So
yeah, listen, you dropped a lot, in that intro, and those folks down in Burlington County are blessed to have you.
Yes.
And they're even more blessed to have you in the role that you're in as a dean of students. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that, but that fits you perfectly. Like, I feel like, from what I know about you, knowing you and working with you at some points, and even coaching you, I feel that is a optimal role for you. You've always been someone who's been very endearing, very genuine, and you've always been upbeat. Like, as much as I can remember you, it's always been with a smile, and it's always been with an anything is possible attitude. And I feel that our young people need that more. We all need that. Forget about just young people. We all need that.
Yes.
But our young people desperately need it now. And on that note, what I would love, to do right now is to go back and kind of hear a little bit about your story that brings you to where you are and who you are now. So, we talked about being a positive role model, especially in education, especially as a Black man in education right now. We are definitely needed. There is a national shortage of Black male educators, of Black educators, period.
Yes.
But one of the things that I think this podcast can shed some light to is kind of like your path and how you started and how you rose up the ranks to go from a substitute teacher to a paraprofessional to a teacher, then to a dean of school administrator and a dean of students. So I feel like outlining your path is important. So if you don't mind, Derrell, I don't know how far back you can go, but if you could just tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up.
Growing up, well, I was one of 3 boys growing up. My parents had 3 boys. My parents was married for about 45, 46 years. And I grew up in Long Branch, New Jersey, right in the shore. Just like your story last year from last week, you had Nicole was on, and I saw her story. Similar, as far as growing up in Long Branch. I was the youngest out of 3 boys. Me and all my brothers, we're all 5 years apart. So if one was 15, one was 10, I was 5. I was, be honest, people don't know. They see the smile, but I was a ladies' man. Honestly, I was a ladies' man. I was never really a fighter. I was a ladies' man. But it had its benefits and it had its downfalls because I was a charmer. I was able to get what I needed when I needed it from there. But what that did was that it let me see a different light as I grew up, like as I got older. So with being a charmer like that, I had a nice smile. I was able to get what I wanted from my teachers like that as well. A smile. I was able to turn lemons into lemonade throughout from there. I didn't get in trouble that much. I love school. I was class president. I was captain of the football team. I was captain of the basketball team. I was that guy, but most of my lifestyle, I pretty much lived a lifestyle that was the limelight as well. And I tried, I was living like what could I say? I lived a life that I wanted to be seen, and I wanted to be known and things like that. I had nice cars and this like that as well. But as I got older, I realized, that lifestyle wasn't for me. I had to, like I said, I had to humble myself. I wasn't honoring the things I was supposed to honor, like that, especially as a man of God. So I could say, my last 3 years of my life was probably the rougher years of my life. So my younger years, I pretty much was, like I said, when it comes to women, I used to have a lot of trouble with a lot of relationships when I was younger. I used to jump from relationship to relationship to relationship. And what I used to do was I used to get with B. I used to get with B because what A wasn't doing. Then I would get with C because what B wasn't doing. And I never got a chance to be by myself ever. And that's how relationships is to be. So Mr. Sapp never had a chance to be by himself ever. So this last, 2 or 3 years, I had to really get a chance to break away and really, be by myself, really possibly by myself, and really spend a lot of time with God from there. A lot of people know I was married, and I went through the process of divorce from there. And, divorce was like a spiritual death, spiritual death, especially through COVID as well. So before I just turned 40 about like a month ago in October. And I'm glad that I realized this stuff before I was 40 as well. But my early years, like I said, I was just a ladies' man from there, sports athlete as well, nice cars, jewelry and things like that. Nice guy, a lot of positive things in my life, though. I was always in the church and things like that, but I was living a life of the limelight, was never to myself. I was always into something positive.
Yes.
Never was to myself.
Yes.
I was always D Sapp. I was always big Sapp. I never spent time to myself from there. I was always that guy. So, and that's where, I was living a double lifestyle. Living a double lifestyle.
First of all, and some folks are commenting in the chat saying thank you for the transparency.
Yes.
I think that you touched on a lot of things. The one thing that I want to kind of draw out of some of what you talked about and maybe talk a little more about is you coming to the realization that you needed you time. You needed to discover who you were, or maybe rediscover. Maybe discovering is the wrong word, but maybe it's rediscovering. So you needed to rediscover or discover who you were. And to do that, you needed time and space. So you needed time alone from intimate relationships. And you needed space to rediscover or discover yourself. Yes. How did you come to that realization? Because, you're a young man. And, I know you just hit a milestone of 40, which is beautiful, man. Every year, every minute that we get on this earth is a beautiful thing. But how did you come to that realization that, you know what, and when did you come to that I need some me time? I need to discover me. If you could just talk about how you came to that realization and what it looked like. Did it mean cutting certain things off? Did it mean people, places, and things? If you could talk, because I really feel like Sapp, and I'm just keeping it 100. I feel like a lot of people can benefit from what you just said. And if there is any kind of insight you can share in terms of how you did that, what it looked like. And I don't mean you getting deep into your personal story, but just giving us some ideas of what that might look like.
The word is accountability. I had to start taking accountability for my actions and stop blaming other people for my actions, as well. Just taking accountability for my actions and say, you know what? Why am I not getting to where I need to be at as well in all aspects of my life, not just in my career, but in my family, but in my finances, all aspects from there, And then also, being a man of God, I say, you know what, I have to do it God's way. It's only one way to do it, and it was God's way. God didn't want one foot in and 1 foot out. So I had to do it God's way. And I started taking accountability for my actions. And so that's what I was not doing. I was blaming this person for this. Yeah. That was, from there. And so just taking accountability for my actions, saying, you know what, Derrell, no, you can't blame it, on the devil. It was like, you did that, So taking accountability for my actions.
I'm smiling, Sapp, and I'm smiling because what you're saying is so important. You talk about accountability. Self-accountability is probably the hardest accountability. It is, it's freeing. It is liberating when we do have self-accountability. It's easier to point the finger and say, this person did this wrong, that person did this, whether it's this person ruined my life, that this person that made my life difficult, whatever, we can blame folks. But to really get into that mirror and have that accountability piece, when you went through that process of really kind of like that self-accountability, what, if you don't mind me asking, what was the hardest part about that, holding yourself accountable for your actions? What was the hardest part about that?
The self-accountability was the when, like the when it was going to happen, because you have to keep consistency. And I always say consistency brings continuity. It's like, I always say I had to be what's called a 24-hour conqueror. That's what I told myself. You get 24-hour conqueror. Like yesterday be yesterday and let tomorrow be tomorrow. And then I had to be a 24-hour conqueror throughout the day. And I broke it down like sports. I always bring my day to like sports. You get your first 2 hours. To 12 is your first 2 quarters of the day. My lunchtime would be my halftime. And then I got 2 more hours. Then that'd be my third quarter and fourth quarter. So I just try to be a 24-hour conqueror, and then like consistency, bring continuity. And then I just had that faith, and say, you know what, I got through this first 24 hours. Let me keep going, because if you give up, and then I realized, what, the race ain't to the swift. But it's to those who couldn't endure, and then I just kept my mind focused, kept renewing my mind. And I said, you know what, I'm not worried about the win, but, why am I going through this process?
Yeah.
Process, from there.
Yes.
Process.
So you took a big picture and you broke it down into these small pieces and these small segments. And you're right. A lot of times in athletics, that's what we do, right? I remember when I coached, I coached in sometimes, especially when I coached basketball, and we were playing a tough team, and I would say, okay, we're going to break the game down into 2 minutes to 3 minutes. Instead of looking at the entire game, we're going to look at it in these 2 minutes, and we're going to have goals for these 2 minutes, for these 3 minutes. And then it gives us reason to celebrate when we reach those goals and they're attainable. So I love that you took sort of the sports, and put that into like, all right, you could take something big and you could take it and make it small. I remember one thing my grandmother used to always say is, how do you eat an elephant? And she used to say, one bite at a time. So it's kind of like, you taking this big thing and you're breaking it into smaller pieces. When you went through that process, can you explain when you realized or felt that it was working? Because I think that, and think about this as you're answering, I think that sometimes we get into, whether it's rediscovering ourselves or discovering ourselves for the first time, and it can get hard when you put that mirror up, and sometimes we can fall back. So with that in mind, can you talk about, did it get hard? Was there a time where you were like, it's easier just to kind of have no self-accountability?
Yeah, you know what? To be honest, I tell people all the time, I actually as a black male, I had a therapist, and I know black males, black people, black males, we shy away from therapists, and I tell people, you must have the good book and a good therapist, and what my therapist said was that, you know what, you have to silence the noise. That don't mean you need to be distant from people, but silence the noise around you. And that's what I started to do. I started silencing the noise around me. And that's what I was able to do, silence the noise around me and stay focused on my task and give myself routines. And with a routine, I was able to keep focused and keep going from there when I was able to silence that,
So when you silence noise, and I feel like, I'm sorry, but I just want to keep going through this because I think that you're talking to a lot of folks right now, Sapp.
Mhm.
When you silence the noise, that sometimes means people, places, and things
Yes.
that you have to step away from.
Yes.
And sometimes, and I'm speaking from my own experiences. Sometimes when you make that choice of people, places, and things, and knowing, okay, I need some distance from these things because they're not bringing me closer to my goals.
Yes.
Sometimes folks that you're moving away from, sometimes things and spaces and places that you're moving away from, you can struggle with that in terms of like, oh my God, am I turning my back on my people? And then sometimes not only can you struggle with it, but the people that sometimes you have to separate from, because maybe at that point your goals are not aligned.
Yes.
They can have
Yes.
struggles. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Because sometimes people, things, and places can be fatal distractions. They could be fatal distractions. Those people, places as well. But you can't. Sometimes you can't be too hard on yourself because sometimes people are too hard on themselves.
Mhm.
Sometimes sometimes you are going to fail, but you got to keep on going. Just like a hurdler, you might hit that first hurdle, but you might keep on going, and you might hit the next hurdle, but you might still keep on going, but you still could win the race at the end, as well. Like certain friends I might hang out with, at nighttime, I say, you know what, I might feel bad the next day.
Yeah.
But then you say, you know what, why? But if I keep on hanging with the same person and feeling bad, why am I going to keep on doing that? So, you got to keep learning your lesson. You got to keep on going. Like I said in the beginning, it's not about the swift. It's about those who can endure,
Yes.
So those little distractions, you have to learn people, places as well, and you keep on going. You have to keep going and keep going from there. And that's where my mentoring come at as well. So if I'm mentoring these young men as well, I talk of experience, and experience is always the best teacher. You have to silence the
Mhm.
noise
Mhm.
around you. So
Mm.
now I'm not just teaching these young men, I'm teaching them off experience as well. So they can look at somebody, and that's why I dress up the way I dress up around these young men, so they can see
Mhm.
somebody who looks like them, can talk to them. Because when they go to the streets or see these videos, they see somebody with their pants hanging down. They see
Mhm.
somebody that either they don't have these positive mentors around them as well. So that's why I dressed up. But before I was even an administrator, I dressed up like this as a teacher as
Mhm.
well. So I said in my head, I want to be this business. So what I did was I spoke this into existence of looking like this as well. Where I was in schools where people thought I was the administrator and I was just a regular, the teacher. So I said, you know what, one day I'm gonna be that. So I had to speak stuff into existence as well.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I'm a firm believer in what you just spoke to, in terms of, you kind of made me think of something. I remember one of my mentors used to say, dress for your next job, so to
Mhm.
speak. Like, you need whatever role you're in, you need to be dressing for your next role.
Mhm.
And it sounds like that's kind of like, what you're hitting on. Is that kind of what you mean by, I was just a
Yes.
teacher, but I want to. So I want you to talk a little bit about this, because you said I was just a teacher, which I believe, like, whatever space we're in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't mean just a teacher, but what I mean was I was not the person that could do the discipline, do the suspensions, make those type of calls when it came to overseeing the school. I was a teacher who had to make the lesson plans as well.
Mhm.
So that's what I mean by, I was just a
Okay.
teacher in that role.
And
But yeah, you need to dress for the success, or dress for the role that you want to be as well. So I encourage people like that. Like when they like my bishop might say, shout out to my bishop Dorian Morgan, also my pastor Dr. Joy Morgan. They say, you know what, if you want to move, people want to move, but they didn't even pack the boxes yet.
mm,
You got to start speaking for what you want.
mm,
So that's what I said. So people will say all the time, well, before I even had my teacher's certification, I'm saying to people, I'm a teacher. Before I was an
mm.
administrator, I say I'm an administrator. And
Yes.
people say, no, you're not. Well, I say I am. So that's,
And it was those affirmations that you were
yes,
even feeding yourself. And
yeah,
then even with, and I love it when you said about with the clothes, I feel like that's important too. So you not only were believing it, but you were also manifesting it, and bringing it into the physical realm in
yes,
terms of not only thoughts, but also like, this is how I'm going to dress. This is how I'm going to present myself. This is how I'm going to move. These are the things I'm going to do. So I feel like you put that whole package together, because I think sometimes when it's dangerous, Sapp, Derrell, is when we always hear like speak it into existence, right? But then another thing I used to hear the elders in the community used to say, when you pray, move your feet. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm thinking these things into existence, but then I'm not doing the work or the things that are kind of leading me to that. Like, it's not magic. It's not a mysterious thing that's going to just happen for you, right?
You have to do the work, through it as well. I always reference, my bishop like that as well. My pastor preached last week. She said, her and her husband was driving through a storm, and, the wife said, you know what, it's a storm. We can't see no further from here. We should just stop right here in the storm. But the husband said, you know what, if we stop right here, we're not going to go through further. But the husband knew if they keep on going through the storm, it's sunlight going through further. So you got to keep on going through the storm. Keep going through the storm. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And I always tell people, listen, if you're still breathing, it's never too late. It's never too late if you're still breathing. So I tell people, listen, go for that job. Do what you got to do. You're never going to get there if you don't try. So
I love that.
I encourage people as well.
I love that. I love that. Especially the encouragement piece. In speaking on that, what I kind of would love to hear from you is where that came from, or what were your early experiences with being encouraged by others, whether it was family, whether it was teachers, or what have you? Like, when did you first feel like you felt the power of that word, of someone encouraging you and that positive talk? When did you first kind of realize that, and then that have an impact on you and how you looked at yourself?
Well, for one, I don't like confrontation. I don't like confrontation at all. I'm a person who likes to dead it just like that. I don't like confrontation. I don't like to hold stuff over my head. I don't like to go to sleep with stuff, with issues or problems like that as well. I had a lot of positive mentors as well. Donald Colvin was one of my mentors as well in middle school. He really instilled some positive work ethics in me as well. I remember when my daughter was first born in middle school, he said, I need you. So I didn't do that. I didn't do the 3 weeks when my daughter was born. I think I came back the first 2 days.
Wow.
Middle school for me. So, but I don't know. I just was always just positive, and that's how I'm, like, when people, my Facebook friends, I'm really like how I'm positive on Facebook. That's just how I am. And nothing's perfect. Nobody's perfect, but I just like to stay positive. And I like to bring that out of my staff, my students. I like to bring, my office is just all positive stuff. I always stay humble, good things, come to those who hustle, inhale confidence, excel, doubt, all dreams are possible. Yes, you can. I just like positive things. I tell people, if it's not positive, it's poisonous. And so positive mentorship as well. I think everyone needs a mentor like that as well. And what I believe in is what's called the theory of 33, 33, 33. And what that means is that I think you need to be around 33% of the people that's doing exactly what you're doing.
Okay.
Other 33% of the people are your mentors, people that can help you get to where you need to be at. And then you need to be around, you need 33% of people you're mentoring. Just like a trainer needs to keep himself together. And that's why you need 33% of people that you're mentoring as well. So, we definitely.
I love that. I love that, yo. And that gets you to that 100% in terms of, because this ends up being the time that you're spending on this planet, right? So you're saying if you do 33, 33, 33, that, and if you're around positive people who are aligned to your mission,
y'all working together.
Yes, I love that. And then I also love the part about the activity part, the activism rather part of, also part of that 33 is you doing the thing. So you're receiving that positive mentorship, but you're also giving it back.
Yes.
And you're also, talk to us a little bit to the community, a little bit about that. When you felt like yo, I feel like I have an impact. Because one of the hardest things, and I'll preface it with this, one of the hardest things, Derrell, um, in a lot of people who aren't in education, a lot of folks who don't work with young people, they sometimes could quickly, and we kind of touched on this last week with Nicole, they quickly, outsiders can sometimes, or adults can sometimes quickly label kids, identify students, assign certain attributes to them, or certain feelings about that student or that young person, and it could be negative.
Yes.
Can you talk to me a little bit about, like, even maybe with, in terms of your history, with working with youth, um, where you had to maybe work and even express with adults the importance of having this positive outlook on young people, as opposed to this negative, gap mentality, or like they're failures, or they don't do this, they don't do that. Can you talk a little bit about, like, sometimes how you may have had to have conversations with adults about believing in our kids, no matter where
Yes.
they are at that point, but seeing the promise and the hope?
Now, this is my passion. I could talk about this for hours or days, but everyone has to understand that our children and our generation is not the same. But our children nowadays, what we have now is called trauma-informed schools. All right, everyone should know what trauma is, but we have children now who come to school with a lot of trauma that they're impacted with. And one thing they have now is called ACEs training, where kids, could take an ACEs test where you can find out a lot about the parents as well as the kids and stuff that they deal with as well. It may be an abusive home. It may be a form of sexual assault they may have went through. It may be a loss of a parent. It may be a foster home that a child may go through. But you might not know that from looking at them from the outside. But these children bring these into the school systems as well. And so they're dealing with these difficulties, and they're showing it through their behaviors. Me, as an administrator or the child study team, could see that in their charts. And as well as, knowing that if a child has a foster home, is dealing with grief as well. So when a kid comes into school, they might curse you out, but that might had to deal with something at home. So you cannot take offense to what's going on as well when the kid goes out from there. So a lot of these children, we have a lot of trauma-informed schools as well. So we're working with the staff. And then on top of that, you have a big turnover rate in education as far as the teachers. And now it's a shortage of teachers. So it's a lot of different variables that go into a school system and why certain schools happen to have behavior issues as well.
Yes.
So we want kids to learn, but how would you want a kid to do a standardized test before they come in, they hungry, they're nurtured, they have a hole in their shoe, they're starving, they couldn't do their homework because mom is arguing with the boyfriend, our the sister's baby is crying at night, and all this kid is just want to just come in and sit in the classroom and put their head down because they're tired, and then they get crampy when the teacher say, put your head up, so a lot of different things goes on.
Yes.
So we have to be nurturers to our students and our kids as well.
Yes.
And then the kids, all they could do is go to social media and get influenced by the things they see from these videos as well. If you go home nowadays and drive home at 3:00 in the afternoon, you won't see students outside no more playing at the basketball courts or riding their bikes, skating. Kids are home on social media. So there's a lot of different variables that go into these behaviors as well. That's why we need to work and be cognizant of what, students' behaviors as well.
That, you hit on, I'm so happy because you went right to where I feel like we need to go. You have taken us there. And you hit on the ACEs concept, and I put it in, onto the screen for folks who may not be familiar with that terminology, which is adverse childhood experiences. And if you do research on it, you can find out, more about it. But there's an index. There's a way of calculating the amount of adverse childhood experiences that young people experience, children experience, and the impact that and not that it's causal, so it's not a one-to-one, but there could be a correlation between behaviors that you see or outcomes that you see in school settings, or forget about school, just life outcomes that you see for young people. But the why is sometimes built into these adverse childhood experiences. So these can be experiences of abuse. These can be experiences of neglect, household dysfunction. Like, for example, I was, last year, around this time, 2 days ago, last year, my wife passed away. And, going through that, I quickly identified, because, we have 2 children, that my daughter and my son are now on that they're on the radar for those adverse childhood experiences. So therefore, them dealing with the trauma of losing their mother at such a young age can have an impact on their development, and if educators, if adults, if teachers are not aware of those things, we can penalize young people because they're going through with the ignorance of not knowing that they're going through what they're going through.
Yeah, so I challenge, even adults to take the test. And you can look it online and take the adverse childhood experience ACEs test yourself. And it can even, show you what you're dealing with and how you can work with your child as well. When you look at your scores and you say, you know what, that's why I may, react like that as well, because I may be going through this as well. So
yes,
you could take the test yourself.
Yes, which goes back to what you talked a little bit about counseling too, like the importance of counseling, and importance of taking that test. And it is a free test. You can go right online and you can take it. And that's part of, though, Sapp, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's part of that self-awareness part. That's part of that knowing who you are, because before we can even be in relationships with whether those are partner relationships, whether those are platonic relationships, whatever type of relationship, whether that's a relationship between a student and a teacher, we first have to come with a knowledge of ourselves and an understanding of who we are before we can thrive in any of these relationships. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. I think a lot of people are, find themselves in new relationships, but they're still hurting and they're not identifying the trauma or triggers that they're dealing with. But we need to deal with the triumphs as well. We can celebrate the triumphs, but let's figure out the triumphs, the traumas and the triggers that happens first. And then you can have a successful relationship. And that's what I had to do. I had to figure out what was my traumas and what was my triggers in order to celebrate my triumphs. And now I'm seeing my triumphs now, but I had to identify my trauma and my triggers. From when I was younger as well, because sometimes it could be passed down. Sometimes it could be stuff that you went through as a child, as well as certain things that might have happened to you, and those could be your traumas. It could be triggers that happen as like going through a divorce, going through death, like that you experience, and those would be triggers as well in the traumas. So
that's dope.
Those things from there, but you have to go through those things first, and then as you do that, then you can have those successful relationships that you need from there.
But that's the work.
And a lot of people in our community don't understand that first. And that's why we have failed relationships, because we don't address our traumas and our triggers. And what we're doing is we're dragging people along, and we are dragging people along to find our traumas and our triggers. We need to identify that.
Yes, I'm with you 100%, 1,000,000%, Sapp, on that. One of the things that, and even when working with educators, a lot of times I get the easy question to ask if something goes wrong with a young person, if something happens in the school. Sometimes the easiest question to ask is, what happened, right? The harder question is, everybody can ask what happened. That's just a question we always ask each other, right? One of the hardest questions that we ask is, why did something happen? Because when you get into the why, now you're starting to uncover and you're starting to trying to figure out, all right, what went wrong here? Or, what are some of the, variables at play, whether it is adverse childhood experiences, whether it is trauma, whether it's something going on at the home. So when we don't ask that why, to me, we're doing a disservice to young people, because now we're just focusing on, oh, they're wrong, this is wrong, they're late every day, but we're not asking that difficult question of, well, why, what's going on? Do you find that in your role, in your work, that
Yeah.
you find yourself asking more of that question and forcing adults to really grapple with that question more?
Yes, I find it a lot in my career and my job as well. I encourage parents to really be a partnership with your child's school, and
Mm,
to really look at those portals where your child grades is at. Don't just allow your teacher to email you. Actually, make sure your teacher calls you as well and speak to you as well. When you say a
mm,
village, speak to your teacher,
yes,
communicate with them, not just monthly, not at parent teacher nights as well, because your child could be totally different when they're home because they're around you, because you're the disciplinarian, you're
they
nurture.
are, they are. Let's keep it 100. They are going to be totally
Your
right.
child,
Yes, in
I
most
see,
cases.
I see your children,
Yes,
when you're at work as
yes,
well. And I tell your children, listen, you're gonna bother me with your job, I'm gonna call you and bother your mom when they're at your job. I mean, when you're at work. So communicate with your teachers. Speak to your children. See about their grades. You know, remember, these are your children. These are your babies. Speak with them. Speak with your teachers. It doesn't hurt. They want to. The
mhm,
teachers want to communicate with you guys. You
yes,
know,
yes,
and just speak with them, and you'll
yes.
find out so much more about your child as well, and you'll see. But you remember, it starts at an early age, the early cognitive levels
Hmm.
when they're younger, and
Hmm.
that's where I started off at elementary. I started off elementary for a reason, K through 5, because what happened was if you just have one black male in third or fourth grade, that could stop dropout rate at like 40%. A black male in education is like a unicorn.
Hmm.
You don't see that many. What you do is you see a lot of black male educators in high school because they do the coaching aspect. And I started off at K through 5 for my career education, and that's where I stayed at. Because what you see is that you see a lot of black males, especially black male boys and minority boys, being placed in special education classes, and nobody's being placed, and they're staying in there until they graduate because nobody's advocating for black male boys at that age group.
Mm,
You barely see them in honors classes when they get to high school, when they get to middle school, because they're stuck there.
yes,
And what's happening is you see the prison to school pipeline because these black boys are getting suspended at an earlier rate. They're getting harsher punishment, and people are not building more jails. More colleges. They're building more prisons because they're saying, you know what, these boys
yes.
are getting like that, and that's where the educational gap is widening for black men.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then our beautiful queens are saying, why is no more black males out there? Because 50% of black boys graduate high school and 50% of them go to college, and so that's why. And then,
And Sap, you touched on a lot of very, very salient points that I kind of want to refocus us on and talk a little bit more about. You talked about talking to your children.
yes,
Um, that starts, as you said, it starts early cognitive. Like, first of all, for even prenatal, we know that we can talk to our children even when they're in the womb. So we know and understand that is something that we can do. So it doesn't have to start when they're 10 years old, when they're 11 years old. It starts in the womb. So
yes,
we should start having those conversations to begin with. But I find that one of the things that I find, even having teenagers of my own, is that the more time that young people are on this earth, the more difficult it can become to engage in those conversations with young people. And a lot of research says that and this is I'm just throwing this out for parents and for teachers, educators, but parents specifically, because if you have 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, they may not really want to talk to you all the time, like depending on the kind of relationship you have. But one thing that I've learned through reading and working with young people is teenagers in that age, they want to control the conversation. So when they come to you to have a conversation, and this happened to me, it was one night I was tired, I was extremely tired, and I feel like my daughter knew I was tired, and she came at that point when I'm trying to go to bed to introduce something to me to say I want to talk about this. Now, At that point, I could have said, well, I'm going to bed. I'm tired. We could talk about it tomorrow. There's a good chance that she wouldn't have revisited it tomorrow, because there's a good chance that she wanted to have that conversation at that point because she knew I was tired, but she also knew that it would be a quick conversation. So I find that sometimes when young people are ready to have conversations with us and when they're ready to talk to us, sometimes as adults, we're too busy to have those conversations,
Yes,
but we need to make sure that we're open to them, to have
exactly.
them, because we may lose that opportunity. You know, like students may come up to you, Mr. Sapp, and say, oh, Mr. Sapp, I need to talk to you, you know, or I got to ask you a question, you
And,
know?
and that's the truth. What happened is these children, they have a voice. They definitely have a voice now. And parents, you have to listen to your children. I know and back in the day, it's whatever I say, you keep your mouth quiet. But these
Yes.
children, if you listen to them, they're going to tell you. And I do the same thing
True.
with my staff and my students as well. If they have an issue, I bring them there. I let the teacher speak first, and then I tell them to be quiet, and then I let them say their piece. And then that's the mediation that I let them do. Because the children, they're going to let the teacher know, but I say you're going to speak in a respectful way. I might, bring them together and then let them talk. And I mediate with them as well. But I'm the mediator between the two. And and I mean, after class, she might say, well, I didn't want to move my seat because this student was making noises, or we had an issue on the bus.
Yeah.
But at least she was able to express herself from there.
Yes.
So parents, what you possibly can do is you could do something like you could give to get. You might want something from your child, but you maybe could give her, give them something like maybe some extra incentive to get what you want from your child. So you give and get from there, like something like that. You could work with.
Yeah. I like that. I like that advice. Incentives are good. The other thing that I think works is car time. Parents having conversations in the car, if you're picking up your child, taking them home, or what have you, that is a very good time to have conversations, because young people know how long that car ride is going to be. So, because what you start learning about teenagers is they don't want to spend a lot of time, in a lot of cases, engaging in conversation with adults,
Yeah.
especially their parents. Okay.
Yeah.
So when they know, okay, this is a 5-minute ride, so this is the time that to bring up something, maybe if you're in the car with your child or children, it's the perfect time to bring it up as a parent, because that young person knows this is a 5-minute ride. After we get out of the car, there's a transition, so I can break away from this conversation if I need to. So that's just a little tip out there, for having those teen conversations, those preteen conversations, because they're not really trying to be beaten ahead by us for hours and hours, at their age. So, Sapp, can you tell us, you're speaking on so much goodness, bro. Like you're hitting us with a lot. Like there's a lot of gems and there's a lot of jewels that you've been dropping in this podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about failure? And you can speak even specifically about, academic failure, like a time where you failed, but you had to kind of get back up, get off the ground, wipe yourself up, and move on. I feel that I spend a lot of time now talking with young people who are unaware of what they want in terms of their future. They're unsure. They lack confidence. They're afraid to fail. Some have failed and they're afraid to get back into the game. Can you talk to us a little bit about any experience that you may have had in failure, but then being able to, whether it's reinventing yourself or
Yes,
getting back up and doing your thing?
definitely. A lot of people don't know that I was a young father. I was actually had my son 2 months after graduating high school. And I wasn't sure about being a father. I was not sure about being a father. Actually, I wasn't even there when my son was even born. I was actually getting my freshman physical for football. And I said, you know what? Only way I could be a good father is if I actually still go to college and provide education for my son. So I was 17, 18 when my son was born, 2002. And it was rough, being a young father at 18, going off to college to Jersey City University for the first year. Then Jersey City University football team shut down. I'm a prominent athlete, football. So wanted to go to Montclair State football from there. And it was tough because as a young black male, you're a star athlete. You had to win a football game, rush down to Monmouth County University to go pay child support. Sometimes you would bring your son to the dorms and bring him up there. Sometimes you didn't get a chance to celebrate your football games because you had to get your son when y'all won the game on the weekends. But you know what? It was times where I had a village. My mom was in a senior year. I'm sitting here, Eagles. I would say, if I'm good enough, the Eagles came and saw me. San Diego Chargers. I tried with the Cowboys. But I couldn't practice the way I wanted to practice because I had a son at a young age. And then they wanted me to have doubles, but I said, I can't practice the way I went. I was practicing with Joe McAuliffe, so I had to go to Plan B. And that's the one reason why I went to education, because in the power with Ms. Vega in the school system. And I said, you know what? I said, I still was educated. I still had an education degree and I had to raise my son because his mom, my senior year, his mom said, you know what? Can you raise me to live with you? Because I'm going through some stuff. So my senior year, my son started living with me. And I wasn't able to, but my mom helped me out. I was a power in Long Branch. Everybody remember it. My parents living in Neptune. I started living back with my son at the college. Me and my son, my mom used to drop us off at the train station in Asbury. We used to take the train to Long Branch. Me and my son, I will go to the middle school. My son will go to West End School. As a dad, I was a single father. A lot of people don't even know I was a single father. I used to be at the allergy appointment with my son, being at the chorus concert with my son as a single father. I raised my son as a single dad. And a lot of people know I was a single dad.
Yeah.
And then from there, I raised my son till he was 16 years old.
Wow.
And my son always wanted to live back with his mother. So I let him live back with his mom. So he got the experience of that when he was 16 years old. Got into little challenges when he went back to Scranton with his mother. I was a single father with my son. It was rough.
Wow.
He went to visit his mom during the summer times, but during the school years, he lived with me till he was 4 years old till he was 16 with his mother. And like I said, it was challenging because holiday times, Mother's Day at church. From there, he wanted to live with his mom, and then from there I thought I would do it again. I had another child at the from there, but that situation didn't work. Another child didn't work from there, so I said, what, I had to take accountability, like I said from the beginning.
Yes.
And then I got married, because I said, this time I'm done. I was going to write a book, Single Father Saved from Sin. I was going to write that book, Single Father Saved from Sin, but that didn't work from there. Wound up getting divorced. Went through a whole thing. Had a beautiful 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. Wound up getting divorced. Lived in this whole house for a year and a half by myself, through the start of COVID. Lost my grandmother in March. My grandmother was the rock of the family. Lost her. More than my grandmother from there. Then I lived in this big house. My wife separated. She got an apartment, not too far. Didn't work. I took accountability from there. Lived in this big 4-bedroom house, 3-bathroom house. From there, in house, relationship got back together, wind up selling the house. But I remember in this house going through depression, going through anxiety, living in this house. Some nights, fighting demons, fighting spirits because of the things I went through as a male. From there, wind up selling. Moved to Atlanta for 3 months. But I said, you know what? It was my purpose to still come back. I said, you know what? The people in New Jersey still needed me. So I came back in the September. I had one of the worst years of teaching when I got back because I said, I'm still depressed and things like that. I came back to Trenton schools. I switched the schools I was in. I came back from there and I started a fresh year over. Went to Gregory School, one of my worst years of teaching ever. I wanted to quit teaching. It was still COVID. I used to log off, tell my parents to take over from there. And then from there, I said, you know what? My next year after that, I said, listen, I still got a purpose and this and like that. I came right back to the same area I was in.
Wow.
Here. And then I switched over. I went to the year. I got a new mentor. I came back to a church that I started learning in, growing in. And I saw my purpose from there. And God, I said, it's only one way to do it. And that was God's way. And that's the clothing brand I want to start up called God's Way, because there's only one way to do it is God's way. And it's, and I still was going through it. A lot of people know my car got stolen. A lot of people from there. I was going through depression still. I got evicted out of my apartment that I was living in because I was still going through depression. And still, I was going through so much. This guy said, you know what? From there, sleeping in my car at night. And this was still was teaching, but it still kept my head high. Still kept my head high. Going to work, still suit tie, sit in my car some nights, was still undecided about what I needed to do. From there, mentoring kids, keeping my head up high. From there, and I said, you know what? There has to be a light at the end of this tunnel. From there, and I tell people like this, it was a story. From there, God had to make me lose my mind in order for me to find my mind. From there, and now I can say, you know what? I'm walking better from there. I'm not where I used to be. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm on the way to where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
From there, I got my own place right now. I'm doing what I need to do. I'm healthy, making a little more money now. I got my little vehicle right now. I'm in a great church, great organization, and what happened was, I got a great group of friends, male friends right now. So I share that testimony to say, you know what, people, just keep your head. You got to keep going. Like I said, it's not about the swift, but the endurance. But you said something earlier. What really inspired me? What inspired me was that, I don't know if you remember, in Asbury, they had a big drug sweep one time. Some people in Asbury, and I used to do security. And I remember one time I was out in Asbury and I saw all these cars lined up, these drug dealers' cars lined up. And instead of me growing envy, I said, you know what? That's temporary money. And if I'm gonna make money, I'm gonna have some long distance money. And you know what? The next 2 or 3 days, that big raid happened. And that really motivated my mind to say, you know what? I can't grow envy over that type of instant drug money.
Yes.
And I said, you know what? If I'm gonna have money, I said, I'm gonna do it the right way, and I'm gonna, from there. So that was one of my positive moments in my life too, as well.
That's dope.
And there, I just mentor kids from there, and just keep my head up high from there.
That's dope.
And
that's so powerful. I feel like you opening up and being vulnerable and sharing that is really beneficial, because a lot of us are going through those things that you just explained in our own ways, in different ways, but we're all lifing, all of us. I don't care who you are, you're lifing. And sometimes we're too proud to grapple with that and to look it right in its face. So we try to escape it. But what I like from hearing what you said is that you never stopped. Because I think that sometimes, even when things get hard like that, we have this feeling of like just a giving up, of hopelessness. But it seemed as if you found the power and the strength and the faith to continue. Even if it's like, because I always use that fake it till you make it. I used to didn't like that, but I love that, because I think there's a lot to that. Like doing the thing, continue to do the thing, even if it's not working right now, but believing in it and continuing to do the thing, and then the reward is going to come.
Yes. And I tell people, a lot of people go through certain storms, people are depressed, people have anxiety, like that, but you have to be a 24-hour conqueror every single day, and because I always say it's like birthdays. Today might not be your birthday, but you need to celebrate somebody else's birthday, because your birthday is going to come, and you're going to want somebody to celebrate yours when it's your turn. So you have to believe in other people's, and you got to keep on going from there.
I love it.
And
I love
it.
Just
stay positive.
I love it. I love it, Sapp. I'm processing so much of what you're saying, because it's so much to gain. Sometimes we can look at people from the outside and we can have this idea that they have it all figured out, that they're all perfect, that even sometimes we can say, especially, not only young people, but period, we can look on others' lives and we can say, I want that life. If I had that life, everything, I'll be fine. But we never know what folks are going through and enduring and working through, just like you just shared.
Man,
you shared that.
You can see a person's glory, but you don't know their story. That's an example I do in one of my mentoring programs. What I do is I get a white piece of paper, and I have everybody write their problems down, right? I have everybody write their papers down on a white piece of paper, and they write their problems down, and then they have them ball it up. have fun, ball it up the piece of paper. And then I say, you know what? Ball your paper, have a little snowball fight for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Have a little snowball fight for like 2 minutes. And then I have everybody just pick up a piece of paper. I said, but don't write your name on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Don't write your name on the paper. And then I have, pick everybody a piece of paper, and somebody reads one out. And then they read one out loud. Don't say who the problem is, but listen, and I tell you what happens. I say, you know what? Everyone has a problem. I see that. Everyone has problems.
I love that.
Everyone has problems.
I love that.
Everyone has problems.
That.
So
yes.
you got to get yourself through problems.
I love that. I love that, Sapp. That's dope. And hopefully educators heard that one. And you know what's crazy? You can think that, that may work with, fourth graders, third graders. That will work with seniors in high school. That will work with I can see that working with seniors in high school.
Yes.
Because we're all trying to figure that out. And that kind of goes back to even last week when I was talking, Nicole and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about the gap between the relationship between the elders in the community and the youth of the community. And a lot of times it's because there's a fear that we feel like these kids are too grown. But like you said earlier, these kids are seeking out guidance. They're seeking out structure. They're seeking out some type of expectation from adults. And when we start putting things like that into their lives, like what you just explained, I can just imagine doing that kind of, project or activity with young people, in a high school, in a middle school, and how deep that can get.
And you can understand that we say that kids are grown because kids may curse. You might see a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old curse, but I guarantee you, if you put some Legos on the floor of a 9-year-old, that 9-year-old still gonna play with those Legos. Even though they could curse, they play a 9-year-old, they're still gonna play with those Legos. Yeah. So it's just their perspective and what they're exposed to. So you got to make sure you got to watch what your child's exposed to and things like that, because they're just picking up on what they're exposed to. That's why when you said earlier, the early cognitive levels, their brains are like sponges when they're 9, 2 or 3 years old and 4 years old. So you have to watch what you when you talk around your children or what they're exposed to as well, because that's all they're doing is picking up what they heard or saw or seen or what they're watching. So you have to have like a gate over your eyes, the mouth of what's coming in and what's coming out.
And that is one thing that I push back on, that when you say the sponges, because we've always said that. But then what you just furthered in saying is they're not sponges, because sponges just absorb. But what these kids are going to do, they're going to absorb it, and then they're going to amplify it through their actions. Yes. So we have to be very careful in terms of just thinking, that's just going to be absorbed. And it may not be amplified immediately. It may take years for it to amplify. But if we're feeding the wrong information, we can start seeing some undesired outcomes in terms of how they are acting and amplifying it. So it's not just going to sit there. They're going to take this in, and then they are going to act on it. It is going to be it's going to become living proof and things that we can see with our own eyes. So you, Sapp, I feel like you blessed us with so much tonight. One of the things that I love to do is ask, especially you as an educator, this should be interesting to hear you going back to your high school self, going back to Derrell, as a high school, maybe a senior, going back there and then explaining to us any type of advice you would give your high school self and why you would give that advice.
You want the truth?
Listen, at the purpose of practice, that's what we dealing with. We dealing with the truth and the square. So give us the truth.
Give you a little bit of truth. A couple of truths I would have probably did was I probably would have took better advice when it came to my sports career. Because I feel like I could have took more advantage of the college I probably picked when it came to football, because I feel like I was overly talented and I could have went to a better program that would have, but you know what? Then I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now though too as well. Yeah. And also the other thing I probably would have wished I would have been a little more not into girls as much, because it did not. Now I find myself flooded with the things where like I want to be in a stable relationship, And now I'm fighting to have that, in a stable relationship. I want to be a man of God where I'm a husband, a solid husband, where I set those examples, because what I did was, right now I'm trying to break those generational curses where I'm teaching my children that, a solid home. It's going to happen, but I'm just working like backwards design, like I would teach backwards design now.
Yes.
Where I could have had a solid home with my 3 children. So, but I had to go through it now backwards now.
Yes.
So if I didn't so much then, now I'm gonna reverse it now. So I have a solid,
I love that
now.
I love that. And having that conversation is liberating. It's important. And sometimes even apologizing or making amends, maybe a better term, making amends, with your children or young people. I find that as adults, sometimes we have a hard time apologizing, making amends, having atonement. We struggle with those things. And therefore, we're not modeling it for our youth. So if they never see that and never feel that, then how could we expect them to, it to be nurtured in them and then to come up and to exhibit it themselves. So I love that advice, and I love the athletic device, and also not only the athletics, but you kind of spoke to going off to a bigger college or a better university to, maybe being a professional athlete. And maybe there's more school attention to school that needed to be, placed in order to do that. And then you hit on with the women and having positive female male partner relationships, are very important. So Sapp, I want to, thank you, because you brought so much wisdom to our show tonight, to the Purpose and Practice community. I'm very blessed to have had your story showcase. So now it is a living testament. Not that you're not already a living testament, but now we have an archive, it's archived. We have this story, for us to look back on, and for maybe even in future years for people to look back on. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for being vulnerable. And I thank you for just being sincere. What I'd like to do is ask you if there's anything that you would want to say that maybe you didn't have an opportunity to say in our last hour together that you would like to say or share with the community.
No, but I first want to thank you, Dr. Ross. I want to thank you for being the man who you are, for starting your show back up. I know you went through your storms, but just know that promotion comes after the storm. And that's where you stand from there. A lot of people went through your shoes and they didn't make it out of your shoes and continue as well. You have also in my life. Nobody know that you was my boss as well, not your colleague. You was my principal as well, but you brought me to the beginning of education from there, where you took a chance on me and brought me to Titusville.
Yes.
And if it wasn't for what happened, everything happens a purpose, from there. And it got me to Trenton as well. And so if that had never happened, I would never be here where I'm at right now. So I believe in that. But to the community and to all listeners, just stay positive as well. Just try not to hold grudges to anybody. Build relationship with the people you need to build relationships as well. You never know if tomorrow is promised. Just build relationships with people from as well. You don't want to keep on trying to hold grudges, and because it's like swallowing poison, expecting the other person to die yourself.
I love that.
That's all from there.
I love that. Sapp, I love that. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your family, and the folks, that brought you up. And me giving back to you is only me continuing, the legacy of what even your family poured into me. We talked about your family to start this show, and your Aunt Sherry, so it's only right that I with an opportunity pour that right back into you, because that's the way that this whole thing works. So I appreciate you more than you would ever know. And your story is a testament, and is one that I'm looking forward to sharing with folks, with young people, because I think that there's a lot to learn from what you shared tonight. So we thank you. I thank you, Sapp, and we thank you and applaud you from the Purpose and Practice community. So bless you, brother.
Thank you. And then shout out to the dad's birthday near, as well as all the Sapp family. You know, mention everybody, Long Beach community, and everybody else, as well as my church, Restoration Station, all my friends as well. Miss Pace, you know, that's my girl. Me and Nikki together, you know, in Trenton, you know, we used to cut up in Trenton and get those cheesesteaks. Right? Well, it's Sherrod. She said she was going to boycott my thing, Sherrod Williams. She called me prom date 98 because I went to the prom. She just stopped me right there when I, you know.
She did. She got on. She was faithful. So that's what's up.
Listen, you keep on. You know, everyone have a good holiday season. You know, stay safe, and let's end this year on a positive note and get ready for 2024.
No doubt. We definitely need to do that. And I'm looking, like I said, we're going to come back. You kind of set us up. I think both you and Nicole, these episodes back to back are crazy. Like it's like the bar is high, you know, like we came back hot. So the bar is definitely high. And we're going to be coming back to y'all first thing in New Year, 2024. And now we're going to hit you off with the new year, the new you. But with that said, I want to thank you, Mr. Sapp. Continue to do the great work, the dope work that you're doing. Those kids are lucky to have you. To the Purpose and Practice community, those of you who celebrate holidays during these upcoming weeks, you know, please have blessed holidays, spend them with your family, spend them with your loved ones, with your friends, those are close to you. Cherish those times and those moments. And we will see you at the start of the new year, January 2nd. So peace. And again, Brother Sapp, we appreciate you, fam. Peace.
Sir.
It's an encore banger. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to Purpose and Practice. Yeah, Purpose and Practice. Keep your mental sharp, learn all the tactics. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to Purpose and Practice.